Welcome everyone. This is our Inside Finance television production. I am Ruth Roberts. This TV program is aimed at making it easier for you, the general public, to understand the intricate details of the ministry's functions and services. It's about what we do, who we are, and how we interact with the general public. Inside Finance, an inside look into the nation's business. The government has put systems in place to uplift and protect the most vulnerable through the provision of targeted support, empowerment tools to enable them to become more productive citizens. This is our Inside Finance television production. Don't go away. We will be right back.
With a smartphone, internet access, a debit or credit card, you can pay your taxes and licenses anywhere, anytime. At pay.gov.gd, you can make simple, easy, and hassle-free payments.
Welcome back. In case you've just joined us, this is our Inside Finance television production, an inside look into the nation's business. Today we have with us Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Mike Sylvester, to talk about budget implementation and measures. Mr. Sylvester, welcome. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on our Inside Finance television production. Of course, it's your home, but I'm still inviting and saying welcome. I know you're a very busy soldier, so you've taken the time just to share with the public some really important information. So welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts, and let me say good morning to all listeners and viewers of Inside Finance. This is a program that I think is critical in this period in terms of providing information on what the Ministry of Finance does, its mandate, what are some of the key deliverables and so on that the Ministry of Finance will continue to roll out throughout this year. So I'm happy to be here again to share information with the public.
Welcome. That's what we call getting from the horse's mouth. So in terms of the budget preparation process, I think probably it's one of the busiest season or period in the operations of the Ministry of Finance. And we've just completed the 2023 budget. It is really happening within the context of a very unusual experience, because that's the year when we had an election and a lot of other things happening at the same time. Give us a sense of what that experience was like.
Right. The budget is a major undertaking for any government, and so we try as always to prepare the budget ahead of the following financial year. So by November, December, you expect to have a budget in place. The government will roll out the measures and roll out the plans and program for the upcoming year. We also prepare the budget within the context of a medium-term framework, and so not just looking at 2023 in this particular case, but 2023 and 2024. Yeah, as you rightly said, this year, very different, very special. We had elections in the middle of the cycle, and so with a new government installed, we had to, in a sense, start from scratch. And so it was a very, difficult experience. But I want to, of course, thank the staff of the Ministry of Finance. I must congratulate them for the human effort, for the very, heavy undertaking in getting the budget ready on time, ahead of the new fiscal year. And to a certain quality, I think the budget was of a very high quality in terms of what's there. Of course, you're talking about 600 plus pages, and so obviously you may find one or two errors, but I think, broadly speaking, on balance, I think it's a very, very good budget document.
There has been a lot of talk about inaccuracies or inconsistencies within the budget. Can you give us your sentiments of what would you say to that?
Well, I don't really want to respond to that in a sense. Especially as it's out there, as in terms of the when things get out, and then you tend to, your response could be taken in a certain perspective. But what I'll say though is that the budget is, as I say, it's solid. When I listen to somebody comments about these inaccuracies and inconsistencies, I think these are easily debunked. I mean, I'll just give you a couple examples. So for example, there was a comment or comments around the fact that the budget on economic growth, that there were some inconsistencies with what the budget speech said and what the document itself said. I think the specific comment, what I heard was that the economy is expected to expand further in 2023. And then in another document, it said that the economy is expected to decelerate. Now, decelerate is not decline, right? I mean, if I use the example of a vehicle, for example, if you're going on the road, you're going on Grandlands, and you increase your speed, it means that you're increasing, right? So in other words, you're going at a faster rate, right? Mm-hmm. If you slow down, it means that you're decelerating. It doesn't mean that you stop. It doesn't mean that you're in reverse, right? So I think in the same way, that's the simple explanation in response to that comment. So I think it's just a clear, perhaps misunderstanding, I would say, in terms of what the budget is saying, but there is no inconsistency there. I mean, we talk about, for example, you can also talk about another example very quickly, is the whole issue of the financing for the budget. And that one is a bit alarming for me, because the budget clearly says that these are the sources of financing for the budget. In any budget, there are three sources of financing. You can finance it from external sources, you can finance it from domestic, and there is what we call other. If you look at how the budget speech is written, for example, what it does is try to explain when you say external financing, what it means. Right. When it says domestic financing, what it means, and when it says other, what it means. But if you read the entire sentence, it says no financing from these sources. In other words, it specifically states that no financings are going to come from drawdown from the consolidated fund. No financing is going to come from sale of assets. It says specifically where the financing is going to come from. It says no financing is going to come from the RGSM in terms of new issues. What you're going to have on the RGSM is basically rollovers of existing instruments that you have there. So I mean, all those things are pretty clear. And I think anyone who understands the budget and so on will be able to know and understand these things. So in a true sense, I wouldn't say that there are no errors in the budget. Of course, I said it's a 600+ page document, but for the main part, the budget is very solid in my view, in terms of what's there.
When it comes to the fiscal measures, and Prime Minister the Honorable Deacon Mitchell announced a number of them, but in recent time we've heard that he said that those fiscal measures are experiencing some delay. So which ones are delayed, and which ones are taking effect from this week?
Right. So to implement anything in the budget, there are a number of things that have to fall in place. So you have to have the legal instruments in some cases, or in most cases you have to have the legal instrument. You also have the administrative and technical aspects, right, of these measures to implement them. And so the timing of February 1st was important in that regard. So most of them, for example, didn't say January 1st because it recognizes that you need to do certain things to actually get those measures up and running. What we found in terms of the rollout of the measures, though, is that there was some issues that were raised that were tangential to the actual measure itself. So in implementing the measure on sugary beverages, for example, concerns were raised about, well, there could be other items, for example, that are carbonated or that are aerated that do not contain sugar. So how do you then sort of distinguish between those? And so there was a need for a deeper dive. And what we are trying to do at this stage is basically to go down deeper and separate those items and so on. That in a sense, they probably fall within the broad category, but are not heavily, doesn't carry a lot of sugar and so on. We are also requesting support from our partners, the World Bank and others, to provide support in terms of that. There are other, this is a tax that is implemented in over 57 countries. Right. Even in the Caribbean here, we have Barbados and Vincent, one of the other countries that are also implemented those taxes. So it's a case of basically trying to refine. But in terms of those measures, so that one in particular, that's the increase in VAT on sugary beverages, that is deferred.
I mean, I wanted to stick in a
To
little
March.
thing there when it comes to the sugary beverages. Like persons, sometimes they hear tax and they come at a full stop. But also that the fiscal measures, including the taxes, are, I mean, would you say that they are, the reason we are trying to implement them is so that we can protect health later on. So it's not so much about the tax, so much as, okay, it is a tax just because you want to put money on the process, but that you want to encourage people to kind of have a healthier approach to, you know, to, I mean, I know you're the finance man, but at least you could say.
No, well, I think the policymakers were clear. The minister, I think the Minister of Health also, Minister of Finance, Minister of Health, I think they spoke at length on this matter. So, I mean, so I don't think I need to say further on that. But you're right. You're right. I think the aim of the tax is not so much a revenue enhancing measure, but it's basically to address some of the health concerns as well in terms of non-communicable diseases, diabetes, hypertension, and so on. So that's that. On the other one is the support to the creative economy. So the government has announced that is one of the key drivers of economic activity going forward. And to be able to support that, there are a number of things that will be put in place to support that. And one of them is concessions on production equipment to support the creative economy. What we have now is a list of items, right? So whether it's a piano, whether it's a guitar, a list of items that will classify and fall, that will benefit from the 100% concessions on VAT and CET. What we are in the process of discussing now is that given the dynamic nature of that industry, depending on how you coin the legislation, you can have issues in terms of every Monday morning you have to tweak because something that didn't fall, that you didn't contemplate, would then come and then you have to go back to cabinet, you have to go back to change the law and so on.
Right.
So we felt that it was necessary to have some further consultation on that and to be able to have a clear sense for all to understand that these are the measures, these are the items that will be considered under the particular measure, right? The other measure that I want to talk about quickly is the whole issue of this VAT on the supply of newspaper. Again, we are looking further into that to ensure that the newspapers and so on are not taxed. In a sense, what you have now with most of the newspapers are online. Right, the issue of the physical newspaper and so on is not an issue. So we have to find a way to deal with that. But outside of that, for example, you still have newspapers coming from Trinidad and so on, I think, that are on the market. So we have to sort of walk through and make sure that these are not unduly taxed. A very small measure, though, in a sense. The increasing excise tax on alcohol and cigarettes, that was passed in Parliament. So essentially, as of February 1st, you have that measure coming into place, but the government has said that they would push back until March 1st to be able to deal with some issues around that. What we found as well in terms of the items as e-cigarettes and so on, although they are cigarettes in a sense, they don't fall in under the original harmonization code, as they call them, HS codes. Those codes have been in existence for quite a long time, so they don't capture some of the new items. And so e-cigarette would be classified as a humidifier, for example, and not as a cigarette. So there needs some further work to just clarify that. So it's minor things in terms of some of the measures that will be implemented, and perhaps you can just quickly talk about those. The VAT on the 19 food and other basic items, I mean, that is going to happen on February 1st. And I will speak about that a little more, but all the legal instruments and so on are in place for that. We will talk about in a little bit how government is going to ensure that the benefits are passed on to the population. Yeah,
because I really wanted to ask on that. But before that, can we talk a little bit about how, taking into consideration the delays that were legitimate in terms of ensuring that when it is implemented, it benefits as many as possible, if not all. What measures are being done to improve the implementation rate?
Right. So in terms of implementation rate, and I mean, that's a bigger question, but in terms of the measures. The fact that these things are moving is really implementation, because you have implementation of policies, you have implementation of plans, programs, projects, and so on. So in terms of the budget getting off to a very good start. The fact that a number of these measures are going to take effect on February 1st is a very positive start. We can also talk about the reintroduction of the petrol tax on fuel at the lower rate of $3.50. That has really taken effect, as well as the harmonization of the rates across Carriacou and Grenada. So both Carriacou and Grenada are paying the same prices in terms of gasoline, diesel, and kerosene. So those are measures that are already taking effect. And so in terms of implementation, you can say that the budget is off to a very good start in terms of some of those measures. But we'll talk a little more about implementation in a broader sense.
Right.
Yeah.
When it comes to the basic food items, so I just want to talk about that before we go to the break. All of the measures are being put in place to benefit the general population. How would the Ministry of Finance ensure that the relief measures, the benefit of it is actually passed on?
Right. So a very, very important question. I mean, the government implemented the freight. That's the cap on freight. Now, the cap on freight was broad. We're talking about all goods imported into the country. Now, the administrative burden of monitoring this is beyond us. With these measures now, it's a lot easier. You're talking about 19 measures, 19 items, food and other essential items. So it's a lot easier to monitor these. And what we are going to do is first of all, a VAT audit of these items before the implementation date. So that is in process now. The Inland Revenue Department has been reaching out to some of the major supermarkets to look at the price breakdown structure of these goods. So in other words, you look at, what is the cost, the cost insurance freight, what is the tax, what is the margin, all of these things on these goods, right? So you get a starting point and a base, and after the measure, then you basically compare and contrast. Right. Now, by being VAT exempt, these measures mean that they are not charged VAT at the customs, and the shop or the supermarket or so cannot charge VAT to the consumer on those items, right? So, in other words, what the IRD will do is to look at those items, look at the price breakdown structure, and see what are the drivers of any increases in those prices. Now, obviously, if you're in a inflation environment and the CIF or the basic cost goes up, then you will see an increase in the price. But it doesn't mean that they are actually hiding the VAT in there, or it wouldn't mean that, for example, they are increasing the markup. So you will be able to find all of these things and be able to monitor and provide update on these items, because it's not a significant amount. 19 is a lot by many of the standards that you had before, because in many respects you have a list already of items that are VAT exempt in the VAT schedule that have been implemented over time.
When it comes to the other measures like water and electricity, probably should take a break. Those ones might be a little bit heavy. We can come back and speak with you a little bit more about that. This is our Inside Finance television production, and inside look into the nation's business. The budget highlights the government's intention to safeguard existing programs, safety nets and other programs, and the ultimate aim is to ensure that the vulnerable in the society really are able to benefit from these measures, and the government's intention is to consistently improve service delivery in these areas. So we will continue to talk about what the budget has highlighted and how the Ministry of Finance is making efforts to ensure that those measures are implemented. So stay with us, we will be right back.
Hello, I'm Emmanuel Duncan and I'm a small business owner. And as business people, we can get really busy at times. And we don't like to wait in lines. So what can you do about that? Well, one thing that I did differently this year is that I used the government online payment portal to pay my vehicle registration, my driver's license, my property tax, and you can pay for a whole lot more government services there. And as I prepare to file my corporate income tax and my annual stamp tax by March 31st, I'll be filing and paying using the online tax services platform. That's at taxservices.gov.gd. So, save time, pay online, and remember, in business, time is money.
Welcome back, listeners and viewers. I'm Ruth Roberts. This is our Inside Finance television production and inside look into the nation's business. And today we have with us Mr. Mike Sylvester, who's the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, and we are talking basically about the 2023 budget implementation and the measures. Mr. Sylvester, we were talking about the items that were VAT exempt. Can you give us a little bit more, because I know the list is a little bit more exhaustive. Can you just give us an idea of what those items are as we speak?
You're right. So, I mean, the items, I mentioned the 19 food items. If I could just go through the list very quickly in terms of the 19 food items. So we're talking about veggie patties, olive oil, canola oil, soybean oil, you have sunflower oil, coconut oil, red kidney beans, black eyed peas, lentil peas. You're talking about hand sanitizers, adult diapers, baby diapers, toothpaste. You have also toilet paper. You also have bathing soap. You have laundry soap. You have sanitary napkins and condoms. So these are the basic food and other essential items. Now, in terms of the measures that will take effect on February 1st, I just want to go back to that because we mentioned the 19 VAT items. Also want to mention the reduction in the VAT on mobile data. So that is, again, to support the digital economy. That is going to happen. You have the reduction in VAT on electricity. Right? So right now, VAT on electricity is charged at a rate of 15%. Across all consumers. There is one exception, which is the St. George University. I think they are currently charged at 10%. You would have a reduction in the VAT by 50%, so that will be 7.5% effective February 1st. That will take effect. You would also have the reintroduction of the 99 kilowatt hour, right, threshold with respect to VAT. So anything below that does not attract VAT. Above that, it attracts VAT. You also have the EVL, environmental levy. That is going to be reintroduced. Previously, as you know, on utility bills there is an EVL, and there's a threshold there in terms of when you pay, right? EVL, whether it's at $5 or at $10. So at over 150 kilowatt hour, you pay $10. 99 to 150, you basically pay $5. So that's on your bill. It's a $5 charge. It's not a charge per whether it's per kilowatt or per gallon, as you'll see in the case of water. It's just a flat charge, right? Below that, the 19 kilowatt hour, you don't pay VAT. You don't pay EVL. So basically, you're going back to that. Initially, it was the 500 kilowatt hour for both the water and the EVL, and of course that has now gone away. We spoke about the the sugar as a basic item. Sugar is now going to be taxed at a rate of 15%.
Okay.
And again, for the very same reason that we mentioned above, for the sugary drinks and so on, to deal with the whole issue of diet consumption, trying to reduce some of the non-communicable disease and the impact of that, which again, as was said, and as we all know, has a huge impact on cost on the health sector. So basically, at least one of the measures that will address or go towards addressing that is basically, in a sense, helping to reducing our consumption of some of these items. So those are the measures that will take effect on February 1st. As I mentioned before, some of the other measures will take effect from March 1st. But for the most part, I think in terms of the percentage of those that will take effect now, it's more than 50%. So that's a good start.
Right, and which is a good thing because a lot of the measures are like the decision is up to the consumer. You can consume less
Right.
and pay less. I mean, and persons will talk about the economic situation and how prices are going up. But no, those measures really forces us or maybe encourages us to consume less so that we pay less. So I think it's a good thing. When it comes to the analysis that have been done on those measures, can you give me an idea of the impact of those measures, say the water or the electricity, on the actual vulnerable citizens?
A very good question, because I think the analysis that went into those measures, I mean, it was quite a bit, and so it is very targeted, so it does not impact the poor and vulnerable or the less fortunate, as you want to call that, call them that. So if you want to look at electricity, for example, right? We have about 48,000 households in Grenada. Right? So in other words, the households that actually have electricity connection, we're talking about 48,000. Of that, 21,000 consume less than 99 kilowatt hour.
Wow.
That's 21. That's right.
Wow.
And if you talk about up to 500 kilowatt hour, we're talking about another 26. So you're talking about almost basically close to the 48. Yeah. Consume less than 500 kilowatt hour. So very few households in Grenada are consuming over 500 kilowatt hour. I mean, I don't know if you can check your bill. That would give you an indication. I mean, my bill usually around 400 kilowatt hour, and I mean, like, I have ACs, I have this, I have that. So I don't know any poor households that are consuming that. So that's an important thing. So in other words, that measure would not have any impact. And when you look at it, when you go into the details of this, so for example, the person who is consuming 99 kilowatt, they will not pay the VAT. Right. They will not pay the EVL. And in addition to that, government has a 10% subsidy that is going to be applied to the bill, effective February 1st. Yeah. So what you find in this context is, even if you were to increase and we did the analysis, so we sort of look at it from the context where you put back in the 25% non-fuel tax reduction, and then you sort of do the math. It is actually cheaper now for the person consuming under 99 kilowatt hour, and that's the vast majority of the poor and vulnerable, or the less fortunate, if you want to call it that, in Grenada. So that's the kind of analysis that went into those numbers. The same thing for the water. When you look at persons who are consuming under 2,800 gallons, that's about 23,000 people, 23,000 households, sorry, not people. Right, which is the vast majority of the households that we have in Grenada, right? So it's a lot of persons would not be impacted by this at all, right? Especially less fortunate, and so that's the kind of analysis I think went into the measure. So as you rightly said, they're well targeted. They're specifically targeting persons at that level, and I mean, you can check your bill for yourself. It's, again, like, and Nawasa's bill are very clear in terms of what you pay and what you consume.
But I see that thing, the issue with us, we don't really like pay attention to our consumption, and then we deem that things are expensive. I remember there was a time that I would leave my transformer on, and I was actually paying $150 a month just for the transformer. And I was calling Gwen Lake, what about this and that? And then when I really do analysis, I realized it was on me. And as soon as I adjusted that, I will take it off when I'm leaving home. My bill just slashed in half. So yeah, it's important for us to be able to, whether it's water or electricity or whatever other measures, the measures are in place, and it's incumbent upon us to take real due advantage of it.
Yeah, I just want to add again, because I mean, yes, the oil is a very volatile commodity, and we do expect at any time that you can have a change in the international price of oil, right? But what I'll say though, based on what's happening, or what has happened in the past couple of months with international oil and so on, I mean, you're going to see a decline in your light bill. You're going to see a decline in the price of petrol based on how these are calculated. In other words, the formula is used to calculate these things. So for the next couple of months, before anything starts happening again, you are going to see that, right? And as I said, these items are very volatile. Right. So any little shock could cause oil price to
so while we have it, we take advantage of it.
So you're going to get a break again for the next couple of months, perhaps, before you see anything. And if it remains as it is, because right now, if you look at the Brent and the West Texas Index, these are the benchmarks for oil prices. I mean, those are much lower than they were in December and before that. So in a sense, you will see some reduction, not by government doing anything, but by the fact that these prices are since a bit lower than they were. Yeah.
In terms of government finances, I mean, what is the state of the finances as we speak, and maybe what can you tell us about what we're seeing in terms of collection for the month of January so far?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the government continues to prudently manage the finances of the state. The budget for the year so far, we've had collections from both IRD and customs are on track to exceed targets. In fact, IRD has already exceeded the target, because as of 27th, as of last Friday, right, the target for IRD was around 31 million, 31.5 million. They've collected already almost $33 million. Right, customs, the target 30.5 million. As of last Friday, they collected about 27.2, with 2 days to go. So the revenues are, in fact, have started to perform very well, and we hope that continues, so that there are no issues. And outside of that, I mean, I always make the point that, I mean, I've been around long enough to know when government operated on an overdraft of about $60 million. That's all we had in the bank. We didn't have cash. So the fact that we are not operating with the overdraft now speaks volumes, and so I think that's enough to basically tell you that the financial situation is not precarious. It's in fact, I think it's stronger than I've known it to be in a lot of years.
Okay.
In my 20-something years in the Ministry of Finance.
Wow, that's good news. The big one, payment of increments and salary increases. Can you give us an idea of the status of this?
Well, the salary increases and so on are based on union negotiated agreements, collective bargaining agreements. We had about 3 of the unions agreeing to increases up to 2023. And so the police and prison officers, the welfare associations, I think, as well as the Grenada, I have to get one correct, Grenada Maritime, Manual, and Intellectual Workers Unions, right? They represent the cooks, they represent the estate workers, and so on. They also agreed up to 2023. And so rightfully, they were paid at the end of January, commencing at the end of January. And so we basically await the negotiated agreements with the other unions. I know the government has established their government negotiating team, and I know from what I've heard in the media, there have been meetings, and they're sort of trying to get to the point where they can agree. But as soon as they agree, government will pay. But for the time being, what has been paid are the increments that are due to persons who are eligible for increments, and then the salary increases for those 3 unions that I've mentioned. Right. That took effect from January.
The bi-monthly payment of salaries and pensions, the bi-monthly, I guess for the government service is a new one, and give us a sense of what has been happening. Do you have an update as to where you're at the moment, and what can we look forward to? Maybe a start date or something? Right.
Well, yeah, I think when the measure was announced by the Prime Minister, I think he said it would take about 6 months. And so we're talking about implementation date sometime in April. So by the 15th of April, I would say, is the date that is being targeted now to start that, because if you look at the 6 months, basically April being the first month, and there are some persons who are paid. They are paid. Well, if you're paid in April, middle of April, then of course you get an next payment by the end of April for the 2 periods. So a lot of technical work has already been done. The system has been tested, so they're sort of running a parallel system to see how it works and sort of walk through whatever technical glitches and teething problems they would have. Once that is done, we have the consultations. In fact, the consultations are going to start this week. We have invited the financial institutions and so on to understand and to talk through how it will be, how they will treat with the more frequently, the payments that are going to be made more frequently now. And so in terms of how that will be treated, I mean, off my head, I can probably tell you how I think it will be treated. Okay. You know, the first payment will go into the bank. The bank will perhaps hold half of your mortgage, half of your other bills and so on that they usually deduct. And then you have the rest to be able to spend. And then at the end of the month, they will basically hold the other half for the mortgage and so on, apply that to your account. Right. So in a sense, it doesn't affect you in a negative way. And because I know a lot of workers are perhaps concerned about how that will impact them given their existing commitments. Mm-hmm. But I think if you think through it, this is not something that is brand new. This happens all over the world. In fact, there are some companies in Grenada that are actually paying bi-monthly now. Right. And so we do hope to sort of implement on a timely basis and implement quite successfully. So that's what's happening now, and we hope that there would be no hiccups in respect of trying to get to that date. Mm-hmm.
Wow, it has been quite a number of areas of focus for today, and hopefully you will come back again and update us very soon. So if you have any final thoughts, in a general sense, a lot of work is being done. There is a lot in the pipeline, and efforts are being made tirelessly to ensure that the measures come into effect as soon as possible, as promised, and also that the benefit actually gets to the consumers. So.
Right. Well, thank you. Just on budget execution, because I didn't sort of speak to that, but just to indicate that is well on the way. So you basically have the Minister of Finance issue the general warrant. The general warrant is basically authority for the Accountant General to make payments out of the consolidated fund. So that has been done. We issued the general warrant together with guidelines for implementation. So the guidelines speak to everything, almost everything. So it will tell you how to treat with salary increases, for example. It will tell you how to treat with implementation, monitoring, a framework for that. It will tell you how to treat with overseas travel, how to treat with the no printing of paper. Because a lot of these things are measures that the government announced in the budget speech. Right. And to ensure that these things are followed, right? You have whether it's a circular from the Cabinet Secretary or a circular from the PS Finance, but essentially the guidelines tell you exactly what it is that we expect. In terms of the monitoring and ensuring that you improve implementation, a number of committees that are existing in the law will be reactivated as the Public Finance Management Act. So there is a project oversight committee, or we call it a Public Sector Investment Program Oversight Committee. That committee looks at the major projects and so on, and sort of ensure that they remain on track. We have come up with a budget implementation matrix where we sort of look at every ministry and what are the key deliverables as announced in the budget that you should deliver on by the end of the year. And so there is a committee that will feed into the cabinet in terms of making sure that these things are actually monitored. As they say, what gets measured gets done. So the idea is really to sort of focus on these items and so on. So that matrix will be circulated to all ministries and departments, and of course there will be regular meetings to ensure that we stay on top of all of these things by way of budget implementation. And the issues of travel and a lot of things that has been announced, no printing of paper. So you will see communication going out with respect to that. You will see both from the IT perspective. So you would realize, for example, in some places when you receive an email, right at the bottom of the email, you say if you don't need to print this, then don't print. So some of these messages you might see up around a computer, a printer. There's a sign that says think before you print. A lot of these things. So it's just basically to change culture, change behavior. and to ensure that we manage the scarce resources that you have, because in these small islands, no matter how many resources that you have, they're also very scarce in the scheme of things. And so the idea is to deal with this thing. I just want to touch on two quick matters. I don't know how much more time we have.
No, it's fine.
Right. So the fiscal rules, we have reached out to the IMF sometime last year with regard to supporting the amendment of the fiscal rules. So that is going to happen. They already had the kickoff meeting, and so they're gonna in April they're gonna sort of do both a virtual and a on-the-ground mission, and they will engage stakeholders and so on in terms of trying to improve and strengthen the fiscal rule. One of the main issues is try to ensure that there is an adequate window for investment spending, or spending on items and project and program to support building resilience. And that is one of the key pillars of the fiscal rule. So all the tweaks and so on within there would likely support being able to implement the plans and programs of the government and so on. So it's and quite rightly so. I think the fact that we've gone back to the fiscal rules is a strong signal that there is that fiscal discipline, fiscal responsibility that is ingrained in the psyche of the people. And I think that's good. Yeah. So that's one thing I wanted to mention and make a plug for, because I know it's quite important in the scheme of things.
Very well. Mm-hmm. And that you said two things, but you said one, but I guess
Well, the other one is the National Transformation Fund. Yeah, and I mean I've heard quite a bit of comments on that. The just to indicate that this is something that is going to start. There's what the current NTF, what do you call it, regulations, what it provides for now, is for government to put aside 40% of all the monies going to the National Transformation Fund, right? We have not been doing that. That has not, in fact, since the law came into effect, that has never happened. And so what is being done now is to basically try to effect that. At the same time, when you look at the needs of the government and so on in terms of spending, it makes no sense putting aside 40% when there are needs to be addressed within the current budget, right? So the idea or the change in the decision, for example, from 40 to 10%, is just a percentage change. It doesn't mean that you're taking out 30% from monies already in a fund. There is no fund, right? It's just that you're reducing the percentage, and it says the legislation specifically says not less than.
Right.
So it's not really a fixed number, but it's really a flow. So you can go above that, right? In terms of the contribution into the fund. So I just wanted to make that clarification, because you hear some comments around the fact that the government is cash strapped, so they take it into the consolidated fund, and this is just clearly an incorrect statement. So I just wanted to clarify that. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for
really
sharing this information with us. Ministry of Finance is a very busy ministry, but we really wanted to take the time to ensure that people know what we're doing, and also that we're working in the interests of the people as instructed by the authorities. So thank you so much for joining us and for really shedding light on so many issues for myself and the rest of us. So
thank you.
Wish you all the best. Viewers and listeners, this is Inside Finance, an inside look into the nation's business, and just to say that the government's focused interventions are intended to reduce poverty, also increase economic development and transformation. So it is incumbent on all of us to join, do whatever we need to do, even as we go into our celebration this year. So much is being done, and we just want to encourage everyone. All the measures that are being put in place, it's for you and I, so we can benefit on that. So we had with us Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance, Mr. Sylvester, very busy, but we've been able to help he's been able to help us understand what's going on. So we'll be back with you sometime. We will summon him back on our Inside Finance program to continue to update you as to what's going on. It's Inside Finance. You have a right to know, and we are ready to answer your questions. So join us again next time. I am Ruth Roberts. Blessings, everyone.